The Human Rights Committee of the Chilean Senate has approved the bill that will grant a pardon to political prisoners. The U.S. House of Representatives has formally presented the article of impeachment against Donald Trump to the Senate. Lebanese demonstrators clashed with security forces in the northern city of Tripoli on Monday night as anger grows over a lockdown in the midst of an acute economic crisis. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada. In Chile, the Senate's Human Rights Committee has approved the bill that will grant a pardon to political prisoners detained during the widespread anti-government protests of October 2019 to February 2020 social unrest, which opened the door to constitutional reform in the country. With 3 votes in favor and 2 against, the humanitarian pardon bill was accepted for the debate in the Chilean Senate. The legislative initiative will now pass to the Constitutional Committee of the Upper House for its consideration and might then be passed to the Security Committee. At the same time, relatives of the political prisoners delivered a petition to the executive with more than 5,000 signatures of support, requesting the end of preventive imprisonment for those detained during the social unrest. The Chilean Court of Appeals acquitted all those convicted of the murder of former President Eduardo Frei Montalva on January 22, 1982, at the Santa Maria Clinic in Providencia district. The court overturned the January 2019 sentence in which 6 people were convicted of Frei's murder by poisoning, including the former president's doctors, his personal driver, an army officer, and a former intelligence agent. Of those convicted, only 2 are still alive. According to the court, the evidence gathered failed to prove that the death of the former president was caused by third parties. Relatives of patients infected with the novel coronavirus in Peru have been forced to wait in long lines for hours to buy oxygen for their loved ones. Thousands of citizens are standing in long lines in the vicinity of the company Criogas, waiting to be able to refill cylinders with the medical oxygen. Many have traveled from other districts and are even sleeping in tents around the site in order to be the first to buy the much-needed and scarce supplies. Meanwhile, the government expects the arrival of the first batch of 1 million doses, the vaccine produced by the Chinese laboratory Sinopharm, of a total of 38 million doses before the end of January. The Special Commission of the Venezuelan National Assembly for the Defense of the Essequibo territory has been installed. In line with the state policy, the president of the parliamentary delegation, Hernán Escarra, pointed out that the border dispute with Guyana over the Essequibo must be solved through direct dialogue.
The Republic, Nicolás Maduro Moros, invariably in a sovereign, very patriotic and nationalist position, and completely in accordance with the jurisprudence of respect for our geographic space, and to continue on the basis of the Geneva Agreement to seek a solution through direct dialogue and peace instruments to finally resolve this dispute in a practical way, as this agreement states.
Escarra then explained that the Parliamentary Commission for the Defense of the Essequibo will promote national unity regarding this issue.
The whole Commission unanimously, among our functions, is to promote national unity on this issue. This is a supra-party issue. I insist. This is a supra-personal issue. This is not an issue of groups or sectors. This is an issue of the Venezuelan homeland. Furthermore, with an invariable and clear position, Venezuela is not willing to lose 1 more millimeter of its territory. That is not going to happen, and we tell the people of Venezuela, on behalf of the Commission that I am honored to preside, that all our efforts are directed to ensure that our territory is respected.
Hernán Escarra pointed out that the International Court of Justice lacks jurisdiction to intervene in the dispute over the Essequibo territory between Venezuela and Guyana.
At this moment, The International Court of Justice has issued a sentence that is invalid, calling Venezuela to contention in the legal scenario when it turns out that this is not considered in those terms in the Geneva Agreement and even less in Article 33 of the United Nations Charter, which rather indicates a successive situation of the different institutes, the good offices, the direct dialogue, the investigation, the conciliation, and only at the end, if the parties agree, to go to a judicial solution, which Venezuela has insistently denied.
In Ecuador, the Union for Hope coalition denounced a new coup attempt against democracy during a press conference held at the Democratic Center Party headquarters in Quito. The political coalition pointed out that the attack is being perpetrated by the National Electoral Council and the Contentious Electoral Tribunal, which are establishing obstacles for the Ecuadorians living abroad to cast their votes in the upcoming elections. Among the irregularities cited by the coalition is the failure to comply with the deadlines established in the calendar approved by the Electoral Council. Just a few days before the elections, Ecuadorians living in other countries still don't know where their voting centers are located or which the conditions to exercise the democratic right. Presidential candidate for the Union of Hope, Andrés Araúz, blamed the current government of the Foreign Ministry for the situation regarding the vote abroad and called for the international community to be vigilant of the process. A second group of specialists from Cuba's Henry Reeve Medical Brigade has arrived in Barbados to support efforts to combat the COVID-19 virus. At the request of the government of Barbados, a group of 11 doctors and 4 laboratory specialists arrived from Havana last week to complete the contingent of the Henry Reeve Medical Brigade that is already confronting the epidemic in the Caribbean nation. The brigade chief and the 98 nurses who have been working for the past 9 months in facilities of the Barbadian National Health System are now joined by epidemiologists, pulmonologists, anesthesiologists, physiotherapists, as well as adult and pediatric intensivists. The 4 Cuban laboratory specialists will reinforce the team at the Best Dos Santos Central Laboratory, which conducts real-time PCR tests to identify COVID cases. And we'll go now to a short break. Follow us on Twitter at teleSUR English and Gladys teleSUR.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on teleSUR.
Innovation, science, the technological breakthrough and its influence in society.
Viajeros del saber, el futuro está aquí.
Atomy. Monday, only on teleSUR.
Welcome back to From the South. This Monday, the U.S. House of Representatives formally presented the article of impeachment accusing Donald Trump of inciting the storming of the Capitol to the Senate on January 6. The move triggers the first ever impeachment trial for a former U.S. president. In a solemn procession, the 9 House impeachment managers silently walked the article of impeachment through the same ornate halls of the Congress overrun by Trump supporters on January the 6th and delivered it to the Secretary of the Senate. Trump's Senate trials is to begin the week of February 8th. In the United States, the Dominion voting system has filed a lawsuit against Donald Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, for defamation after making repeated claims of election fraud. The Board of Directors of Dominion Voting Systems, a marketer of software systems for voting machines, is suing Giuliani for more than $1.3 billion due to him pushing the big lie claiming that Dominion had stolen votes in the recent U.S. elections. The company claims that the lawyer's accusations harm its reputation, with millions believe the lies, and has had significant financial cost. Rudy Giuliani is the second person from former President Donald Trump's team of lawyers to be sued, after a lawsuit was filed earlier this year against Sidney Powell. U.S. President Joe Biden says mass vaccinations should become available in the spring, and that he's confident that they will be vaccinating at least 1 million people a day in the next few weeks.
I think it'll be this spring. I think we'll be able to do that this spring. But it's going to be a logistical challenge that exceeds anything we've ever tried in this country, but I think we can do that. So I'm quite confident that we will be in a position within the next 3 weeks or so to be vaccinating people at the range of 1 million a day or in excess of that.
And Janet Yellen made history on Monday, becoming the first woman U.S. Secretary of the Treasury by a vote of 84 to 15 in the Senate. She will play a pivotal role in shaping and directing President Joe Biden's economic policies.
Madam President, it is a pleasure tonight to be making the case for Janet Yellen, former chair of the Federal Reserve, to be the next Secretary of Treasury. It is an awfully easy case to make. Chair Janet Yellen deserves to be in the Senate Confirmation Hall of Fame. She has already been confirmed 4 times for key economic positions. Tonight, the Senate can deliver an especially important economic judgment. Confirm Janet Yellen a 5th time and know that she will work with every single one of us to get our workers, our small businesses, and all Americans from sea to shining sea back on solid economic footing.
And the Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte has announced his resignation as head of the government as of Tuesday. According to a statement from the Cabinet Office, the Prime Minister has convened a meeting for Tuesday morning to inform his minister of his intention to resign. He will then present his resignation to President Sergio Mattarella. According to local press reports, Conte hopes to obtain a mandate from the president to try to form a new government. The political crisis worsened when former Prime Minister Matteo Renzi withdrew his Italia Viva party from the government coalition due to his disagreement with Conte's economic plans and the handling of the COVID-19 health crisis. Last week, Conte managed to pass a vote of confidence in Parliament, but failed to secure a majority in the Senate, weakening his coalition. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez highlighted several economic recovery plans that he will implement in one of the most affected countries in Europe by the coronavirus during his speech at the World Economic Forum.
My country, as you know, is one of the main recipients of the Recovery and Resilience Plan in the framework of the European Union, with an allocation of nearly 70 billion euros in transfers for the period 21-26. 3 aspects need to be emphasized of our plan. The first, investments that will create jobs and transform our economy. Second, enact long-lasting reforms that will raise productivity and also competitiveness. And finally, upskillings and reskillings of workers into sectors with high demand, mainly ecological transition and digitalization. In my view, this is key.
The Netherlands was hit by the second wave of riots on Monday evening after protesters mobilized in several cities following the introduction of a coronavirus curfew over the weekend. Riot police clashed with groups of protesters in the capital Amsterdam, as well as the port city of Rotterdam, Amersfoort in the east, and the small southern city of Chilean near Maastricht. Amsterdam police said they had made 8 arrests. Meanwhile, police in at the moment Chilean said there had been confrontation between riot police and youth throwing fireworks. In Rotterdam, police used a water cannon after clashing with rioters. The city's mayor, Ahmed Abu Taleb, issued an emergency decree which gives police broader powers of arrest. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us.
A review of the world news that investigates, incites analysis and induces criticism, because every event has a context.
Pusimos el punto en el.
Dot in the I. Saturday, only on teleSUR.
为了保持身体健康，我冥想。
Para mantenerme saludable, yo corro.
To keep myself healthy, I study.
Για να διατηρηθώ υγιής, τρέφομαι σωστά.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo bailo.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo purifico mi espíritu a través del cuerpo. ¿Y tú?
Guide your body. Tuesdays, only on teleSUR.
Welcome back. Lebanese demonstrators clashed with security forces in the northern city of Tripoli on Monday night as anger grows over a lockdown aimed at stemming an unprecedented spike in coronavirus cases. Security personnel clashed with demonstrators' anger at the lockdown and the fines imposed against those who flouted it amid the suffocating economic crisis. The Lebanese Red Cross reported that more than 30 people were injured, 6 of them hospitalized. The northern city is Lebanon's poorest, and many residents live below the poverty line. Last week, authorities extended a total lockdown by the 2 weeks to curb a rise in coronavirus cases and protect the collapsing health sector. Today, before the former president of Ghana, Jerry John Rawlings, is due to be buried, his body is lying in state at the Accra International Conference Center, open to government officials and the general public. But as Ghana prepares for the funeral, the country's 2 main political parties are at odds over his legacy. Rawlings had sway for 2 decades, first as a military ruler and later as elected president. He died in November at the age of 73. His funeral will take place in the capital Accra on Wednesday. Behind the scenes, Rawlings' family, traditional chiefs and political figures have been at odds over the legacy of the former Air Force flight lieutenant who twice overthrew governments. He became a national icon as he headed Ghana for 20 years until 2001, being voted as president at the ballot box in 1992. Starting out as a populist inspired by the left-wing policies of the Soviet Union and Cuba, he eventually turned to free market economics. He became a major figure in West Africa and also a symbol of Pan-Africanism.
Who loves the grassroots. He is a father, a friend, and a boss. We love him, we work with him with loyalty because of his way of leadership. So if you see all those who are here, you can see who he is for us. Yeah.
I see it all, but I don't want to say much. He has done great things. If he has done anything that is not called for the people of Ghana to save them, then Ghanaians has been very ungrateful.
And many public services have been reduced in Zimbabwe, where the government has ordered a near shutdown of operations to minimize the spread of COVID-19 amid a spike in the infections. The country is under a strict lockdown, which has imposed in early January, and last week the government ordered that only 10% of state employees should report for work, as part of measures to reduce the transmission of COVID-19. On Monday, usually busy government offices were deserted, with officials only attending to emergencies. Zimbabwe, like many other African countries, initially recorded low numbers of COVID-19 cases, but has recently experienced a spike in infections. There are fears that a new, more infectious variant of the virus may have already arrived in the country, as thousands of Zimbabweans living in South Africa return home for the holiday season. The World Health Organization has warned that the COVID-19 vaccine divide between rich and poor nations is worsening by the day. The UN Health Agency insists that vaccine nationalism could cost the globe trillions of dollars, while right now there is not enough vaccine for those who are most at risk.
Face a crisis now on a global scale that requires frontline health workers, those older people and those most vulnerable in our societies to access vaccine first. That doesn't in any way negate the desire or the will to have the Olympics and to come together and celebrate a wonderful global sporting event where all countries come together to share that. What a wonderful symbol those games are for our shared humanity.
And Morocco began distributing coronavirus vaccines to different regions of the country on Monday. Trucks carrying supplies of the AstraZeneca vaccine, which arrived last Friday from India, left a warehouse in Casablanca, escorted by security forces. The North African country will begin its vaccination campaign this week, with health workers, teachers, security forces, people over the age of 75, and those living in areas with high rates of COVID-19 in the first line to receive the shots. Authorities said Morocco will also receive the Sinopharm vaccine from China this week. According to Johns Hopkins University, the country has reported over 466,000 confirmed coronavirus cases and more than 8,000 fatalities.
We have mobilized a lot of human resources, comprising doctors, pharmacists, nurses, technicians, and civil servants. They are all mobilized for this operation. We also have a partnership with the private sector to benefit from its expertise in logistical and technical fields. With the help of the National Agency for Refrigeration, we managed to have a storing capacity of more than 50,000 cubic meters so that we could store the vaccine under safe conditions.
And Daesh, or the Islamic State, has struck again in Syria, at a time when the Kurdish separatist militias are increasing criminal practices against civilians in the areas under their occupation. This escalation, which Syrians have denounced, seeks to hinder the fifth-round talks of the Syrian Constitutional Committee that started this Monday, January 25th, in Geneva. We have more of the following report.
3 Syrian soldiers were killed and 10 others were wounded in a Daesh ambush on a military bus on the highway between the northeastern province of Deir ez-Zor and the historic city of Palmyra. The perpetrators of the attack came from the illegal US military base in Syria's Al-Tamf area, where hundreds of Daesh terrorists were recently transported from Iraq, as Damascus reported.
We affirm that the Syrian Arab Army and all national tribal forces will confront these criminal practices that seek to destabilize the country in the service of foreign agendas, and we will not allow them to continue to burden the lives of our brothers in Qamishli and Hasaka, and we will hope that they will lay down their arms and stop fulfilling the United States' plans that threaten the sovereignty and territorial integrity of our homeland.
At the same time, in addition to the demolition of homes, the looting of oil and agricultural crops, and the kidnapping of locals in the areas under their occupation, the so-called Syrian Democratic Forces, supported by the United States, have maintained the inhabitants of the city of Hasaka on the border with Iraq under siege for almost 2 weeks. Criminal practices that Damascus condemns as part of Washington's attempts to prolong the war and prevent any political solution to the conflict.
Joe Biden's administration is increasing pressure on the Syrian state by reactivating this terrorist organization and tightening the economic sanctions imposed on Syria to the maximum, in order to interfere with the work of the Constitutional Debate Committee and try to make the delegation representing the Syrian state yield to pressure and offer concessions in the current round of talks.
Meanwhile, despite the aggressive escalation of attacks by Daesh terrorists and separatist militias and continued political and economic pressures from Washington, the delegation representing the Syrian state in the Constitutional Committee talks remains steadfast in its efforts to draft a new constitution that preserves national principles, with the rights of the Syrian people to self-determination at the forefront.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.